Ideally speaking, during a collision, the two colliding objects should apply equal and opposite forces to one another without influencing or changing either object at the fundamental level. Although the momenta of the individual objects may change during the collision, the momentum of the entire system would be conserved. If the interaction forces do not change the objects via deformation or other exchange of energy, then these forces would do no work. In that situation, if there's no work done, then there would be a conservation of kinetic energy. This ideal case, where there's a conservation of kinetic energy, we show that as perfectly elastic collisions, where there's no change of kinetic energy, no exchange of energy. If you have collisions between two very hard objects, such as two billiard balls or two steel balls, that comes close to being perfectly elastic. Those objects are very hard; they don't change very much as they collide with one another, and thus there's not very much loss of energy. In real life, objects are not perfectly solid. When two objects collide, there's typically at least a small amount of deformation on either side. When this interaction forces act over distance, work is done and energy is lost. We see that here in this safety experiment where they crash two cars together. You can see that the fronts of the cars have crumpled. That crumpling has come from the interaction force that either car has applied to the other, and as the fronts of the cars have crumpled, that's work being done, that's energy being lost from the kinetic energy that the cars had before the collision. We've seen deformation as well when we saw the picture of the tennis ball being hit by a racket in a previous lesson of this module. In that situation, the tennis ball is being deformed, and there's friction in that deformation, which causes the ball to heat up but costs kinetic energy. Beyond those two energy losses, there's also vibration, another form of thermal energy, which can siphon away some of the original kinetic energy. You see that here at a baseball game. The ball is hitting a pad on the outfield wall, and you can see the shock wave of the ball traveling outwards from the collision. The ball is hitting the pad, but the pad is radiating that energy away through the rest of its body, taking that energy away from the original ball and pad collision. All real-life collisions are at least a little bit inelastic, in that all of them have a little bit of loss of energy due to interactions between the two particles. The extreme case of that is a perfectly inelastic collision. In that case, the two objects collide and stick together. We see that here, where you have two objects that are moving together. When they collide, they stick and they move at a common velocity. We can guess here because block 1, object 1, is much larger than object 2. The net momentum would likely be in the direction of object 1's original momentum. But examples of these perfectly inelastic collisions would be a piece of clay hitting the floor. There'd be deformation there where the clay would adhere to the floor. If a bullet strikes a block of wood and embeds itself, the two would move together. Railroad cars that collide and couple together, or a dart hitting a dartboard. In any of these situations, the perfectly inelastic collision is the opposite of a perfectly elastic collision. In a perfectly elastic collision, kinetic energy is conserved. In a perfectly inelastic collision, you have maximum energy loss, where the least amount of energy survives because that energy goes into the interactions within the system. Thus far, we've talked about momentum in one direction, and everything that we've said about momentum in one direction is true of momentum in multiple directions as well. When we talk about collisions, typically we think of them as generally one-dimensional. However, that assumes that the objects doing the colliding have no form or feature to themselves as well. In real life, however, if you have two billiard balls that are colliding, both billiard balls have a size and a shape to them. And so when they collide, they're not going to necessarily hit dead on. For example, here we have a ball number 1, which is moving to the right. It's hitting ball 2, but it's not hitting it dead on, it's hitting it at an angle. We know that when we're talking about these solid objects, like these billiard balls, they have their interactions, and their interactions are like normal forces against each other. And in that case, they're going to be perpendicular to each other. What that means here is that there will be a force of ball 2 acting on ball 1, there will be a force of ball 1 acting on ball 2, and that means that ball 2 will head off in the direction of its force. If ball 2 is originally stationary, the only direction it could go would be the direction of its force. If ball 1 is initially moving to the right, but it feels a force that is up and to the left, we know that that force has a component that is anti-parallel with the velocity, meaning it'll slow us down, and it has a component that is perpendicular, meaning that our ball 1 will head in the upper direction, slower than it was going before. While these are kind of qualitative measurements saying where these balls will go, we know that in this situation, the only forces that are acting are internal to the system, if we consider the two billiard balls to comprise the entire system. If that's the case, there's no net external force because the forces are internal. Then, if there's no net external force, that means that the change in momentum must be zero, or it must mean that the momentum before the collision must equal the momentum after the collision. Before the collision, the only momentum was the velocity of the first ball. After the collision, both balls have momentum in multiple directions, and the momentum in each dimension has to be conserved. This means that the x components of the momenta have to equal the x component of the momentum before the collision. The y components of the momentum have to equal 0 because there was 0 y momentum before the collision. Thus, we've talked about the total momentum being the sum of the momenta of the individual particles. In fact, we mean that it's the vector sum of the momenta of the individual particles. And thus the total momentum is a vector, and it's made up of the sum of the momenta of the individual particles. Looking at the sum of the individual particles, it's the mass of each particle multiplied by the velocity of each particle. If the change in momentum is 0, that means that the vector change has to be 0. That means that all of the momentum in the x direction has to equal the total momentum in the x direction before the collision. All the momentum in the y direction after the collision has to equal all the y momentum before the collision. A special case of collisions are explosions. An explosion is the opposite of a perfectly inelastic collision. When we talked about a perfectly inelastic collision before, you had two pieces or two objects that collided and stuck together and moved together as one after the collision. An explosion is the exact opposite. You have particles that are moving together as a unit, and after a brief, intense interaction, those particles move apart from each other. So instead of colliding and forming one object, they are one object that breaks apart and moves apart in separate situations or separate directions. Typically, when we talk about explosions, we have some sort of explosive forces that are pushing our particles apart. But even when you have explosive forces, like the disengaging rocket boosters on a spaceship, for example, those are still internal forces, and so those are not going to affect the overall momentum of the system. If the system is isolated, then the total momentum will still be conserved throughout the explosion. So in that sort of situation, you would have an object that would be moving in one direction. And if that object exploded, where a small part of it went one way and a larger part of it went another way, we'd say the larger part is moving a little bit downward and mostly to the right. We know that the total momentum has to be conserved both in the x and in the y direction. So if a very big, heavy part has a small velocity in the negative y direction, the small part would have to have a very high velocity in the y direction so that you have positive upward y momentum canceling out downward negative y momentum to make there be zero y momentum as there were before, and then the x component of the bigger piece's momentum plus the x component of the smaller piece's momentum would have to equal the total momentum before the collision. Momentum and energy are two separate but parallel ways to describe motion. Energy is often easier to calculate because it's a scalar quantity, so it's found with numbers instead of vectors. Momentum is always conserved in every situation where kinetic energy is not always conserved. Thus, both have advantages and drawbacks. We typically use a combination of both to study motion to cover all of our bases. We use a conservation of kinetic energy when the object is moving on its own, is subject to gravity, spring force, etc. But the conservation of momentum is used when the object is colliding with other objects. We'll see in the example problems in this module how this is achieved.